here's this checkpoint with people with guns, and like, I don't know if they're on the up and up or not. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. We could disappear. Like right now, we could disappear. Nobody's going to know about it. You know, if, according to what happens with these folks, like, I don't have anything to do anything about it with. Like, yeah, it didn't feel good.
That does not feel good.
No, man. So at least the times I've run into stuff like that deployed, you know, it's like, I felt kind of comfortable because there's 3 gun trucks and like 8 other dudes with me, and
Right.
maybe 50 other Indige folks with me as well. So like, okay, cool, you got a checkpoint, cool.
Yeah.
But now it's like, that guy's got a snub nose 38 up there. I got
Whatever they
nothing.
want to do is what we're doing. Today, I'm speaking with firearms instructor Frank Proctor, and we discuss his military background, the importance of being prepared, and the ever-changing gun laws in America. Let's get to it. I understand that you are an instructor for firearms, and I think this has kind of come exposure for me to individuals like yourself. It feels like there's a lot more of these individuals, and I think that's probably a product of social media. But I do think the education of firearms is becoming really important. One, we're seeing kind of an influx for all kinds of reasons where people are buying their first firearm, buying more firearms, this whole thing. So I feel like there's become a greater need to educate the public. So I love having you on here for that reason, because I think anytime we get the opportunity to talk about, hey, if you just bought your gun for the first time, that's great. Congratulations. Have you gone through the training to use it? That's the next question. But you do other things beyond just regular handguns, regular fire. I mean, your basic firearm training. You've got what other varieties can people be trained on like a
kind of my
field
specialty, or what I really dig doing is kind of performance shooting.
Okay.
You know, definitely do have a base, and can work with. So here's anybody, no matter what the application, we got to be safe with guns. And you know, like you said, you know, a lot of new people are coming into firearms, which is great. We have rights, you know, and that is awesome. But there's also responsibility with owning guns. So being able to safely handle them, and then if you're carrying the gun for a defensive purpose, being able to effectively handle it is a very real thing and a responsibility. So definitely, and that's something I'm going to gear more towards offering, like on some smaller group levels that had just got into shooting, good solid base of fundamentals, and then defensive application stuff. But something I've kind of specialized in for a while and really dig is how to do it all better, faster, easier. So.
And you've actually done that yourself, as far as personally. There's some competitive stuff in your background. Is that correct?
Yeah, so, super fun.
What does that look like?
I got to tell you some backstory on it. Way back. I don't know how far back.
Let's go all the way back.
All the way back.
Let's go all the way back.
All the way back. So there it was. No, yeah, I grew up, was introduced to hunting and shooting. I remember like maybe my first experience shooting a gun was like shooting a .22 with my dad, you know. But what I do now didn't start then. Maybe it started then. I don't know. I had some friends that had joined the Guard unit in my hometown and done like the split option thing, where they went to basic training after their summer year or their junior year of high school during that summer. Like, I can't imagine that being that much fun for somebody who's a junior in high school, but they did that. And then after they graduated high school, went on to like their specialty training stuff and everything. So I was like, maybe I'll do that. So I joined the Guard. And like, maybe I was like, hey, the Army will be hard and I'll figure out what I want to do in my life.
Not a bad option. I mean, that's...
Hey, it was a great experience. I think it's something that, you know, for young folks or anybody just having... I know I learned a lot about life and working with other people and everything. It was a good base. I'm very thankful for the base I got. But did that, came back, started going to school at night, and just did like drill stuff, and I don't know. I remember sitting in a classroom one day, and I was like, I picked a major of like pre-engineering. I was like, I don't know, I've always been kind of mechanically inclined or something. Pre-engineering sounds cool, So I'm sitting in a classroom one day. I was like, what do I want to do with my life that involves being right here? I don't know. And I'm like what's at the end? Like I'll push through if I know what I'm going for.
Right.
But that school just, for me, it wasn't like, I don't know what I'm going towards. So I called an Army recruiter, I think 2 weeks after that I was in Germany, in the Army. While I was there, I was a mechanic. It was my first job in the Army, and I enlisted for 3 years.
Okay.
And like as time wore on, I was like, I don't know, I don't really like the Army that much.
What were you doing specifically?
I was a wheel vehicle mechanic.
Oh, okay.
In Europe or in Germany. So it was kind of access to Europe was kind of neat.
Okay.
Especially being, I think I went over, I was 18 or 19 when I got there. It was kind of a cool gig,
Yeah.
But I remember seeing the Special Forces recruiting poster, like my second year or so in the Army. I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. Do all this stuff. I was like, yeah, I want to do that, right? So get all the way to the bottom. It's like you have to have been in the Army for 4 years and be an E5 to go to selection. I was like, wow, sounded cool. All right. So I got out of the Army, came back home. I was a mechanic, and was working in a Cadillac shop here in Birmingham, and it's like October 2011, somewhere around there. It was right after 9/11. That's where it was when like 9/11 happened. I was in the shop, and somebody was like, "Hey man, you gotta go check out what's going on TV." I was like, so I watched the first plane, then I watched the second one. I was like, that went in an accident.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's all going on, and then I hear this kid in the shop, talking about Special Forces this, Special Forces that. I'm like, man, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, it's one of the Special Forces group. I was like, that's here in Birmingham? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you got a phone number for somebody there? So I called the recruiter, and 2 weeks later, I'm in 20th Special Forces group to go into the Special Forces pipeline.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, cool. And like, that was one of those things like, hey, there's an end state, so I'll push through all this because like I want to do this job.
Yeah.
The first thing I did when I got done with the Q course, which is basically like you've got a learner's permit now to go onto a team and figure out your job.
Okay.
So we went to a shooting school. It was our group level CQB and shooting school. And it was my first exposure to kind of what I do now.
All right.
And, it was a thing. It was like, it's part of my job. So it's important that I'm good at it. So people are offering me information. I want to hear the information. I want to put the work into getting better at it. And ain't gonna lie, it was fun. I liked shooting, and I liked that kind of shooting, so put extra effort into it. And then to get to the competitive shooting thing, so this is my spiel for promoting competitive shooting. In 2005, we were running a sniper course, and a guy offered me the opportunity to go shoot a match with him, a USPSA match, like action pistol kind of stuff, the weekend. I was like, it's not real. That's not what we do. Get you killed, right?
Okay.
Every tactical shooter has said that, or many of them have said that at some point in their life, right? So in 2007, I went out and shot some matches, and it was, I don't know, it was humbling because I was the dude for shooting for a Special Forces group. Like everything I knew about shooting, I was good at and comfortable. Finally got comfortable with teaching it to other people. That took a little bit. So the humbling part, like, all right, there were this many people in the match. This is where my name got called out at the end. It was over, right? And it was a challenge. It was like, oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I didn't know this existed. I wanted to be better at it. So started training it and competing pretty often, and really kind of grew as a shooter. And, that passion for shooting kind of kindled out of that too, so.
But competitiveness, does that always translate to like real world knowledge?
Yeah.
Or at some point, so okay,
Yeah.
so because I know in some competitive versions of whatever aren't necessarily, they don't translate the same to like real day to day, or I don't know, real life scenarios, I guess.
On the competitive shooting side of the house, one of the biggest things, and it was a while before it really clicked for me, because it was when I got into competitive shooting, I was going pretty hard, and I was also teaching combat marksmanship to other Green Berets at the same time. So I was
We're going to come back to that in a second.
I'm bringing back information to help the boys go do our job.
Okay.
Right. But at the time when I was thinking that, it was just like techniques and mechanics and stuff. The real juice, and it was a little bit later before it really clicks, like that's what competitive shooting, that's what competing or doing that type of shooting brings, that makes you a better combat shooter or defensive shooter, is the visual side of the house. To be successful competitively, it's a lot about how fast you're seeing. I talk about now as a philosophy of sooner, needing to see things sooner, wanting to see things sooner. So you have the information, and then as a tactical shooter or defensive shooter, you have the information, now you can process it and make decisions about it. And then all the little intricacy, the fundamentals of marksmanship and all the little intricacies of how to shoot and move and manipulate yourself and your guns, yeah, those are icing on the cake. But that visual speed, that mentality of sooner is the real big thing, and that translates easy to any application of shooting.
And that makes sense. That makes perfect sense, because I think that first step you take when you start to get trained with a handgun, you realize how much more observant you have to be, especially if you're carrying like out in public. Yeah. That responsibility of just understanding your surroundings and knowing that now I have a bigger responsibility as a citizen out here. That was the first eye opener. So I could see how that would progress as you gain in education. You're responsible for more too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
So you said you were bringing that back and training Green Berets. So where does that fit in that time?
So that's Army Special Forces.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is something that's happened later. I mean, after your career, is that you can't...
No, that's what I did. And my
that
second job in the Army
Got
was
it.
a
Okay.
Green Beret, or Army Special Forces is Green Berets.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, so that was an interesting thing about learning how to teach too. So when I learned how to teach, I'm looking at 80 Green Berets in the bleachers, like, hey, I'm Frank. I'm here to tell you about shooting guns. Some of you have been in the Army longer than I've have too. So, but so getting comfortable with like what I knew and being able to present it was an interesting thing. Yeah. But with those guys, it was.
Yeah, they could be hard to impress, possibly.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Well, when I knew this interview was coming up, I bounced your name off of a couple individuals, and it was like, oh, that's going to be good. Like he's legit. So you have a reputation. So those Green Berets I don't know who it was, but it's worked out. So what does your current program look like? So if people. It sounds like you take anybody looking to just get additional training.
I do mostly open enrollment stuff.
Okay.
I'll have a variety of, I've done some law enforcement or military only contract kind of stuff where I'm working with just this unit or just this law enforcement agency for a little bit. But mostly what I do now is open enrollment stuff. So I'll have a variety of folks, recreational shooters, they like shooting, just want to do a little bit better. Some competitive shooters, some military folks, some law enforcement folks. And I really like that because everybody's an enthusiast. Everybody wants to be there that day. Sometimes with the contract stuff, everybody doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Some of them are like, hey, dude, it's like Tuesday. What time's lunch?
Feels more like a job for sure.
How long are we going to be here? But the open enrollment stuff's cool.
So have you ever met somebody that you thought shouldn't own? I mean, I agree 100% with the Second Amendment. And I'm always very leery of all the little rules that get put onto the Second Amendment of how we can restrict gun ownership. But have you ever met somebody where you're like, you shouldn't own a gun?
Definitely met people that should be more responsible with the ownership. You hit on something a while ago with, like putting your hands on it and habits. Habits are things that we've either been conditioned to do or we've conditioned ourselves to do, and that's what we're going to do. People say like, hey, it's just there for an emergency. Well, when it is an emergency, what are you going to do?
Right.
You're going to do what you've conditioned yourself to do or been conditioned. If you conditioned yourself to do nothing, that's what you're going to do. But in the interest of safe gun handling habits, a lot of people, I may even say a majority, I don't know, but a lot of people have the habit, they pick a gun up, their finger goes to the trigger. You just look at Hollywood stuff or every movie cover you see, like there's the actors standing there like guns down here, eyes down there, fingers in trigger.
Right.
Like, fingers not in trigger if your eyes aren't connected to the sights. So if your eyes aren't connected to sights, fingers connected to the frame of the pistol or slide of the pistol with some positive pressure. That's like one of my big rules, But yeah, that's got to be a habit.
Right.
And in feel, pistols are a lot about feel. Even like actually shooting it or shooting it well, like how it feels. So yeah, handling the guns and dry firing, and you're absolutely right there. It's a big deal. I tell folks this too. Since 2004, I've trained shooting with a lot of people. I don't know how many thousands. I don't know. A lot of people, a lot of different backgrounds. For a while, it was like an every day of my life thing. And I've never worked with a group of people where somebody didn't have an unsafe gun handling habit. And it's a habit. It's something that most folks don't know they're doing, like leaving fingers in triggers. And that's the number one and most dangerous thing somebody can do as far as a habit, because it's just a matter of time and exposure before something bad happens.
Right.
Like, well, I've been doing it this way for 15 years. Well, tomorrow you could be moving with the gun and shooting and the gun's out of your eyes and you trip and fall and your finger goes in the trigger and you fire the gun when you didn't want to.
Right. It's every YouTube video.
Yeah. Oh God, there's a ton of it. But that's a habit. Like, I encourage anybody, learn safe gun handling habits. I live, there's regurgitations. This is another one of my meisms or whatever. But in shooting and training, people regurgitate things. And I regurgitated stuff for a while. It's just like, I'm saying this because the guy that taught me said it, and the guy that taught him said it, and the book that they learned from said it. So bleh. I just regurgitated what was put in, At some point, I started actually having my own thoughts and experiences and ideas. Like, wait a minute, I just said do it this way, but that's not the way I do it anymore. But there's like the NRA's golden rules of firearm handling, where there's like 4 or 10, maybe there's 4 golden rules. I don't know. A lot of people can recite that. Like if they go to the NRA instructor course or whatever. Not a bad gig, but people can recite that. Like yes, but they don't live it. Say if we live 2 really easy to follow gun handling habits: keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction all the time, and if your eyes aren't connected to the sight, have your trigger finger connected to the frame of the gun. You live by those 2 easy to follow rules, no matter what you got going on. Everything's after that. You can start working on proficiency and performance and all that jive. Sorry, I got
no. That's true, and I think that's super valuable, because I guess I was fortunate that was the first thing I was taught, was like that finger never. And I remember how like unnatural that felt to keep that outside, and I was like, but I want to hold. That's not. I can't hold the gun if if it's not in there. At least even like touch. I always wanted to touch the side of the trigger. That was like what I was doing initially. But I'm just grateful for that, because now I don't even think about that. So it's interesting to hear that so many people, that wasn't their initial training, so those bad habits are formed. But you watch it happen. You've watched plenty of people pick it up. How many years have you been instructing?
Since 2004.
Since 2004.
I'm not good with math,
okay.
So since then.
and it's not just, you're not just locally here in Birmingham. You travel for this as well.
I travel mostly.
Okay.
All along. Even at one point, had like a 33-acre range facility. I thought that was like one of my life's dreams or whatever, like my field of dreams, if you will. And I think I did a lot. It was an awesome range facility, but I still was like, I built this and people were coming, but like I travel more. It's easier it was easier for me to go to LA and 15 people come from the LA area to go out to range than 15 people to come from all over the country.
Well, if you're a new gun owner, that's definitely going to be easier to handle, rather than say, hey, do you want to come fly all the way out here and bring your firearm and all that's involved?
It's easier. I'll drive an hour or so from my house.
Exactly.
So I really travel more. Okay. I do some stuff here. I've got a little small private range, and then the civilian marksmanship program. Okay. Their range is out there close to me now too. So a little bit of stuff here, and then travel a little bit of everywhere.
Now, do you ever travel internationally for?
I have a couple times.
Okay, specifically for shooting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. This thing that I enjoyed doing kind of took me some pretty cool places.
Where's the coolest place you've? Or a favorite, I guess.
South Africa was really, really cool.
Really?
Yeah, kind of did a little tour of South Africa. It was neat. I kind of got to see several parts of the country. Okay. I guess I flew into Johannesburg, did some stuff. I think I did Pretoria first, down in Cape Town, somewhere else. I forget right now. And then back to Johannesburg, and then went out and did like a week. My wife came in after that. We went out and did a week safari kind of stuff.
Oh, I'm jealous. That was so cool.
That was super cool. Just
what are the gun laws like in South Africa?
Best I remember, it's different. I mean, God, we got it so good here. I love freedoms.
Yeah.
And being whether it's in the military, deployed, or some of the other travels around the world, man, our freedoms. God, man, it's like I appreciate it so much more having been places without it. But like one of the things I remember, I like guns, like being able to like, hey, I want to try something new. I can go buy it tomorrow or today if I want to,
What's that like? I don't know what that's like.
Okay.
Same day purchases?
These cats, like, they would have to get like a license for each new gun they got. Oh. And I think, if I remember right, it could take up to a year for the license to come through. Some of the stuff they had to have a reason to have the license, like an AR-15 or whatever. Like they had to be a member of a sport shooting club. And like, hey, I need this AR-15 because I'm going to do 3-gun stuff. And so they have to apply to be a member of that club and then apply for the license for it. And then it could be up to a year, for like, hey, different That's from crazy. Us, like, hey, I want to try X, Y, or Z. You're like, all right, cool, go get it and go shoot it.
Yeah, again, I'm a resident of California, so I'm kind of under the rules that apply to that state. So obviously we're limited on what we can carry or own, period. And then there's that like 10-day licensing thing, which, so we can go in and like do the initial purchase and the initial application for it. And then you come back 10 days later if everything clears. There are guns that we own that are now being restricted. So they've restricted the gun significantly, and now we're looking at them just banning it altogether. So I don't know what they expect us just to hand these things. So I guess they do, because some people do hand these things back over to the government. As an American citizen, when these laws are put in motion or put into place, what's the proper mentality to take? I mean, we're watching, and I know there are videos online, and so I don't have all of the context, but we're watching, ATF agents showing up at people's houses or meeting people out in the parking lot of gun shops and asking things that I believe violate your Second Amendment rights. You can't just walk up and ask people to unload their pockets for at least I believe you can't do that. Yeah. These are rights that are outlined in our Second Amendment. We have the right to purchase these things and to own these things. So if that's going to start happening, what is the mentality we need to adopt as responsible gun owners? If an agent showed up at my front door and was asking to see the firearms that are on the list that he's got in front of him, I mean, I know intellectually what I would want to say. Yeah. But I mean, as you're now looking at a government that is a threat to you in a sense, what do you?
I don't ever want to live in that world. And I tell you what I believe. I'm not a politician. I don't get into politics too much either, but I have thoughts on it. They're people problems, not gun problems. They're people problems.
Right.
There's always been people problems. There's always been wars. There's always going to be wars. There's always going to be bad people. Right. There's always going to be a need to deal with bad people. It's an unfortunate thing. And I don't own guns for the purpose of hey, I got these guns so I can defend myself. I like to have guns because I like to shoot,
right.
The guns that I have for defensive application stuff, those are the ones I hope I never shoot,
right.
But I want my freedom. I don't want to give it up,
right.
For sure. And I'm hoping, that we've got enough folks out there, in the political world that are doing things the right way, or the people that are working with those folks doing things the right way to preserve, our rights. I don't want to think about, being without those freedoms,
Yeah. So I think we would both agree that, in we'll just say a mass shooting situation or where a gun is used as the weapon, that it's not necessarily the gun that's that's not the cause of the violence, that it always goes back to the person, right? We know a gun will just sit there. It's an inanimate object. It doesn't have, people can use any tool to do this. But it seems like violence is on an uptick. That we're just hearing about it more. What are your thoughts on combating that as a society? What are we missing, or what do we need to be implementing?
And I got a few thoughts on that. One, I think there's just evil in the world. Unfortunately, everybody's not like you. I mean, they just want to go and enjoy life. There's just straight up evil out there. I don't know that you can fix evil. So there's that. But can't fix it. You have to be able to deal with it. Somebody has to be able to deal with it. And then there's like another thing that how violence like that or shooting somebody could be a solution to someone. Maybe they're not necessarily an evil person. They're just misguided. Either have some mental health issues they need to address, or how they were raised. Or were they raised? Were they parented? Were they taught consequences? And I do believe as a society we're losing track of putting weight on consequences for action. So I think through that, hey, I disagree with you if I'm going to shoot you. There's no consequences for anything else I've ever had to deal with in my life. So that becomes a solution for somebody. How many times have you seen it like on the internet or social media where somebody disagrees with something and how they come at the person they're disagreeing with? Like, whoa, would you talk to somebody live like that? Probably not without some consequence. I think Mike Tyson said something like that. You say something like that to somebody live, you'll get punched in the face. There's gonna be some consequences. But like person to person, people don't talk like that to each other. Right. So I think the ability to like actually talk and communicate and differ, and be civilized. Right.
And not to fly into a rage when it happens.
And without maybe being detached from interpersonal communication kind of leads to that. It's like, I'm mad, I'm going to go shoot somebody. Right. No.
No, I think it's one of those unknowns, obviously, because we can't be inside the head of everyone. But I think that's those are topics that need to be explored, and I think that would make sense where you're going with that. I didn't plan on getting this political with you, so I'm so sorry. And I'm the same way. At this point, politics, I have opinions, and I know I vote, and I'm try to be as educated as I can. But with this current climate we're in, with the media and news and the grandstanding that you see from politicians on both sides, it's gotten really. I can't give any more of my valuable time to this anymore. I'm just finding myself being angry and disliking, the person I sit across the table from. And I'm like, none of this is beneficial in us moving forward with any solution. And I think you're right. I think the people problem, the fact that we don't discuss mental health more, and I'm not even, I'm not qualified to dive into this on a grand level, but the fact that we've eliminated those services publicly from our society, and I'm speaking very specifically to California, that we no longer offer that as an option for solving any problems. Yeah. It's either just hand them medication or hand them money. Yeah. And that's not solving any of our problems anymore. I just other than just continuing what you're doing and educating people, which I think is a huge thing, that you are continuing to do what you're doing, and that there are others like you that are out there educating, giving people the knowledge, the tools to be more responsible gun owners. But then you also watch people learn things from, I'm sure they learn from their class, and they go back to their families, and then they impart that information to their families. So maybe it's a slow trickle effect, and we just got to keep going.
Education thing, because there are plenty of people in the world that, the only thing that, I was thinking about this morning, I said, like, what if the news is just all marketing, right?
I don't think it's a what if, but I'll let you keep going.
It's just like, hey, this is an agenda that this company wants to push out there, so they put it in front of you all the time, right? So there are a lot of people that, they think guns, and they're like, oh my God, it's a death machine. I don't have no part of a gun in my house. Right. They just don't know. Because all they've been, the only information they've been given is that it's evil, it's bad. But maybe just education exposure, and then like maybe respecting other people's rights. Like I get it. Like, hey, if everybody doesn't want to shoot, doesn't want to have a gun, it's cool. I do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like whatever you want to do. If like, what's that, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as long as it doesn't infringe upon someone else's pursuit of happiness or life and liberty.
We've gotten so far away from that now. It's been a wild couple of years, I think, in regards to that, and just the slippery slope of things we've compromised on because of emotional reactions to things. I guess we've got to just be positive and move forward in speaking out and educating as you're doing. Let me circle back to the South Africa topic, because I know you mentioned you were there doing training, instructing. Were you there for private civilians, or were you there for what? Why did they want you to come out there?
That was an open enrollment course there too. And the guys that reached out to me and brought me, they have a gear company there, and they also do IPSC and everything. So pretty much everybody that was in the course carried a pistol like every day.
Okay.
Licensed.
Okay.
And many of them had used it because South Africa is a fairly sketchy place. Stayed with some different folks there, and everywhere I stayed, it was like there were like gated communities, but not like gated communities we see here in the States. They're like gated with armed guards outside the gates, and like almost like a prison kind of fence, like a tall rock wall with
Very
a razor wire on the
defensive.
top.
Okay.
And everybody's house also had the same fenced-in compound kind of thing. And I remember seeing a sign, ADT, like security systems, right? So there I remember seeing a sign that said ADT armed response. I was like, that's different. But security was a legitimate thing that you had to be aware of, more so there than here. So
these are just civilians,
yeah.
generally, that are just looking for more training.
Yeah, there were a lot of them. We did. They had it was at a club there where they did like IPSC competitive. So there were several like just straight up competitive shooters, and there were like recreational shooters, and there were folks that carried defensively too. They just wanted to look at what I had to offer on shooting. But yeah, different place.
Wonder what it would look like. I mean, it's one of those like God forbid kind of things, but like if our society did change, where we were having to live in communities that looked more like that.
I would say, I mean, they have like really tight gun laws, but that didn't solve the problem that there were people that wanted to commit crimes.
We could talk about that for. I mean, I have ties to Chicago, and like the numbers out of Chicago, it's like that's some of the strictest gun laws. I mean, in the country, you implement more gun laws. The violence,
crime, and violence is like it's more probable because criminals have less fear,
right? Well, and I know the other side of this argument doesn't like to hear this, but it's like they don't follow the rules by definition of a criminal, of what, like, they don't have respect for the basic rules. So we're going to ask them to follow the gun laws, no, if they can have it doesn't follow any logic, that's for sure.
That was I had another weird experience in South Africa too, where not being able to have a gun, I felt super weird.
Because you're not licensed to carry in that country.
Nope. So I could have the guy sent me an invitation like through IPSC to be able to bring my guns over. I chose not to do that. Wish I had have. So at the end of I trained for a week or two there, some different places, and then did a safari thing at the end. And that was super cool. But one of the things we did on the safari, like, the guys I trained with, they took me out as a friend of theirs that had a hunting ranch out there, and go out there and it was a different world getting there.
Yeah.
Just leaving the airport in Johannesburg, like, a mile or two down the road, I was like, oh, wow, this is different. This is sketchy. Things could go south pretty quick. And that was in a city,
Right.
So now we're like way out there, and where this ranch was. And from there, I hunted for a few days and then went out to the Kruger National Park.
Okay.
Super cool. It's kind of like a zoo, but like everything there just lives there and will kill you.
That's where so many of those amazing videos come out off the Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like don't get out of the car, don't roll the windows down.
Right.
The lions on the side of the road will take you out of the car. They're not in a zoo.
Right.
So, but on the trip up there, like windy little roads there, we hit this checkpoint. And it was a police checkpoint, but I've been in, I've been in places like, deployed to places where, like police checkpoints
Right.
ain't police checkpoints. They're a way of, where, these warlords and stuff are shaking people down. So like same stuff be happening there. So there I am, it's like my wife's in the car, there's the guy that runs the ranch there that's taking us. He also is a biologist. He's taking us on the tour of Kruger, and this Danish kid, it's like, that's it. And
Okay.
like, here's this checkpoint with people with guns, and like, I don't know if they're on the up and up or not. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. We could disappear. Like right now, we could disappear. Nobody's gonna know about it. If according to what happens with these folks, like, I don't have anything to do anything about it with. Like,
Yeah.
that didn't feel good.
That does not feel good.
No, man. So at least the times I've run into stuff like that deployed, it's like I felt kind of comfortable because there's 3 gun trucks and like 8 other dudes with me, and
Right.
maybe 50 other indige folks with me as well. So like, okay, cool, you got a checkpoint, cool.
Yeah.
But now it's like that
You're-
guy's got a snub nose 38 up there. I got
Whatever they
nothing.
want to do is what we're doing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
being unarmed didn't feel good there.
And that's so interesting how that's shifted, because I did not grow up with firearms. So I was very comfortable not being armed for a large portion of my life. I just didn't have any thought process beyond that. And so now, but it's really interesting how that shifted. And it's not because I've had people's like, oh, like that's you're comfortable with that, and like, what do you guys all kind of inferring that like we're just all happy to shoot anybody.
Yeah.
Like that's the mentality. And I'm very grateful that I've never had to actually discharge a weapon in a situation where I was looking to defend myself or, God forbid, take somebody else's life. That's not something you ever want to be in. And I think when you're trained, like that becomes something that gets, the more you're trained, the more respectful like you become of that, or the responsibility and kind of the gravity, I think, of what you are being trained to do. And it's not because I want to do this.
Yeah.
It's just because I want to be as prepared as possible in the event that I have to do this. But there is a confidence that comes in that is nice to have. It's just like, okay, well, at least I can. Personal responsibility is a big thing for me in a lot of areas of my life, and that's one where you can kind of take some control and like, okay, well, I've been trained and I have the tools, and if I have to, I have to. But I don't want to. So I wish the other side would kind of hear that too. It's like, we're not promoting gun usage and that we should just all be crazy with our guns and we want it to be the Wild West. That's totally not what it is.
Oh, yeah, and that's the way I live with guns. Like guns are a recreation thing for me. They're
Right.
something. People hunt. I used to hunt. I don't hunt anymore. It's like killing stuff's not. I just don't want to do it anymore. I don't know. But respect people to do this. You're right. You're privileged to do things ethically. Hey, rock on. But that's something we have a right to do, and that's an application for firearms. Just enjoying shooting is an application. Defensive shooting is an application. I like having that freedom too, and like you said, that confidence. It's like, hey, this is the last thing in the world I want to ever do is have to use the gun defensively. But that level of confidence, it's huge, and it's definitely a comforting thing for me. I was telling you that story where like I had the uncomfortable feelings like, hey, I'm not able right now, or I don't have a very good tool.
But that's an awful feeling,
Yeah,
especially
it
when
is.
you've gone. I mean, especially as immersed as you are in that world. It's like that's a
Recognize like some possibilities right there. I was like, oh wow, this
Yeah.
could be really bad, and I don't have a tool.
yeah.
Yeah, but I've had flip side of that. Something I tell folks too, if we are talking about defensive shooting or those applications, like our eyes and our mind are the best tools we can have as defensive shooters. There's stuff on the internet, folks that carry concealed or whatever, like pushing like sub-second draws from concealment and everything. Like it's like the Wild West or something. Like, dude. Nobody's winning that to start with. Like nobody can get a pistol out of a holster faster than the gun that's already out. So that's all. I think that's insane, bad habits, training concept stuff. But situational awareness, using your eyes, seeing things. Hey, life decisions. Don't put yourself in bad places if you can help it. But then, so that's the way I kind of try to live. But sometimes bad places find you.
Right.
Bad things find you when you've done done all the right things, and I've been in that place where like, okay, this something's a little bit off, but I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable because not just armed, but capable. And I think that matters too with training, exposure to it, handling the guns, being able to safely, like we talked about before, having a responsibility to be able to safely and effectively use it if you had to. So that having that, definitely made me feel much more comfortable.
Yeah. What mentality or what would you advise people as they move into exploring new places that they're getting out of the norm? What should they adopt? What should they be thinking about?
So, you say I didn't necessarily like live in fear. I never advise that for anybody, but situational awareness is huge. Being aware of your surroundings and being prepared for possibilities of surroundings. Yeah. We just traveled. My family and I just went out of the country, and so we took it was my wife, myself, my daughter, and our niece. And for the two of them, that was their first time out of the country, I believe. But I was like, all right, cool. Like we're going to, and we went to Belize. So it was like, different place, like felt safe. Everybody would talk with, where we're going, like felt safe and comfortable, but we're going to a different place and it's going to be a different world than, in different areas. And so we had to talk about preparedness and, just like keeping your eyes open, staying together, being aware of things that are going on around you, and, valuables, valuables in front pockets and these sorts of things. And being aware.
Being aware. I think being aware and then being like not afraid to be assertive with like taking control of a situation has been a benefit that I've seen and been able to utilize. Is maintaining eye contact when there's a possible or perceived threat is really hard for me. It's something I have to really like tell myself to do and be really intentional. So I've found
take away some of that, like you're not a victim.
Yeah,
like you're not prey.
I noticed something, and my initial reaction is to kind of like cower, I guess, in a sense, to put your head down and kind of like want to just escape the situation. And I've had one instance where, and it was a perceived threat. I don't know what was actually going to happen. I've been told there's no possible way there was anything good that was going to come out of this, and I kind of believe that. But I had a situation where I immediately made eye contact, and it bothered him. It threw him off. Yeah. And I watched it like actually, and I couldn't tell again if I just made it awkward and it wasn't supposed to be awkward, or I was stopping hey, I see you was kind of like the message. Yeah. Regardless, I'm here and nothing happened.
So that's a win.
But I've found that is something I have to be super intentional with, that it's not a natural reaction to those situations. So when in the situations where I either don't have a weapon or I don't have a tool to actually defend myself, it's like, well, you have some things that you can do physically that might distract, might deter something, that it just says, I'm a little bit more aware than you think I am. I don't know if that would work.
That's a real thing. Like predators look for easy prey.
Right.
They don't want to attack the thing that they think is going to fight back, and sometimes it doesn't take much. And like, all right, never mind.
Right.
Never mind.
No,
moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, make it difficult.
Yeah, and being out like the adventure stuff. Like just who knows who's out there. Hopefully it's just the woods, the mountains, the water.
Right.
But unfortunately there are people there too, and not all of them are cool.
Right. I've taken on different mentalities with like the girls when we travel, and there are boundaries at camp that like you don't get to come in, and because I've learned from mistakes. And I don't live in fear. I really don't. I'm not a fearful person. But as soon as you cross a boundary, like suddenly like it's a different game. If I don't know you, and the reason is I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have someone I can call. I can't scream. I can't even make a lot of noise and get help. Like so I have very few choices in the next few minutes to make sure that this goes well and that we all go home. Yeah. So I've just been okay with kind of creating boundaries that are a little bit further out, that I'm just like in specific situations. Maybe, when I'm in areas I know and I'm comfortable, then those can change. But when I'm in an unknown, it's like I have defined rules for what people can and can't do. So I don't know, maybe I'm a little crazy.
No, it makes total sense. I'm all with keeping boundaries and keeping it out there.
But again, it's that being aware, that situational awareness where you're just kind of always needing to keep things in check and making sure like, all right, I know what's going on. I don't want any surprises. No. I've had surprises in the past, and it's not fun. It's not fun to have to react backward, like to catch up with what's going on. Yeah. So speaking of tools, I mean, you offer the courses, and that's like hands-on training. But you have also designed and created some actual tangible tools. Yeah. So tell us about those.
Yeah. So first job in the Army was a mechanic, and then I did that for a little while. I was kind of always been mechanically inclined growing up. I was the kid that tore stuff apart, but never really put it back together. Okay. But at some point in time, I made a living figuring out how things were supposed to work, and then making them work when they didn't. When guns became my tools, maybe I should back up a little bit. When I was a mechanic, there were certain jobs like, hey, here's like a standard wrench. You could do it this way, but there's an easier way. You get a specialty tool and makes your job easier, faster. You'd be more productive, and easier matters.
Absolutely.
So when guns became my tools, I looked at them that way too. I was like, all right, here's this rifle. Like I'm using it to this. This is the end state. Well, this is in the way. This has got to go. Or let me change this and make it do this easier. So. Constantly with I've always got maybe too many ideas, and I've chased down too many rabbit holes, I think. But I don't know, if you never go down a rabbit hole, you don't know what you might find. Yeah, so I'll go. Absolutely. I'll keep going probably. But I've got a lot of like, hey, that didn't work, and then a lot of did work. My sling, I've been doing this sling now for, I think first one I probably started playing around with was 07-ish. Okay. Started kind of coming up with a different idea for a sling, and then kind of those in production since 2012. Okay. So it's just super minimalist, but offers a lot of everything you need a rifle sling to do. It'll do it, and it's kind of easy. Okay. Pistol sights, had some ideas that I wanted in pistol sights, and for the things that I wanted to do, and most all of my gear, when I actually got them, like the sights, especially when I finally got those in my hand, because it took a while to find somebody to actually make them for me. Because making things out of metal, especially on a CNC machine, like it's a process, and people that own CNC machines have them running like 24/7, making stuff, and like stopping to make a prototype. Like that's not good for business. But
you got to be real good friends with somebody.
Actually worked out really well. I was at a class one day in Missouri, and the guy at the end of the class was like, "Hey man, if you ever need anything made out of metal or wherever, awesome. Let me know." I was like, "Well, could you make pistol sights?" He's like, "Well, matter of fact, that's like mostly what I do." So I showed him my little caveman sketch of what I wanted in pistol sights, and he made them, and those have been around for a while now. And when I got them, I remember thinking, like with all this stuff though, but definitely those sights, it's like, I don't care if I ever sell any of them, I have some now, and it makes my life is easier. And other people have found that they like them too. But,
very cool.
Some other stuff, some belts, holsters and stuff like that.
Now, are these like Frank Proctor's, like yours, or are you making them in like with a partnership with these other?
So it's my design stuff, and I've found had to find some manufacturers and stuff. Okay. I have some good relationships that actually make them, and I did make some. Like the first slings I physically made in my basement. Yeah. I remember, and it's a thing. I have an addictive personality. I told somebody that earlier. Like when I'm into something, I'm all into it. Like I don't get hungry when I'm into something. I don't get tired. It's like keep going. So when I got into shooting, it was that way.
Gotcha.
It's kind of that way with fly fishing a little bit now too. But I remember, I'd stay in my little shop down in the basement, all night. If I was like working on a project, sometimes a lot of times it'd be like, God, that sucked. I did all of this and it just ended up sucking. We'll start over tomorrow. And it's like 3 o'clock. I got to go to sleep. Yep. But I remember like coming upstairs. It was like probably 2 o'clock in the morning or something. I was like, I did it. Look, this is it. And she was like, oh, okay. But
great.
They're out there. And there's like a lot of people who have been digging the slings for a while. So.
That's awesome. It's really fun to have something that you've created, like that's got that much behind it. Those sleepless nights where you're, maybe wasted time, all of that, but then to have actually something at the other end of it that's yours, and it works, which is great. So I know you're super busy, obviously designing stuff, staying up till 3 a.m., all those things. No, if people want to get a hold of you, is it just through Instagram, or what are your other platforms?
So I think all of it's Frank Proctor Shooting, whether it's Instagram or YouTube. The website's frankproctorshooting.com.
Okay. And classes, if they wanted to come train with you, or And you're still traveling too.
Yeah, still traveling. What I've got there, I've got some new ideas for courses I want to do. Coming forward into the next year. This year this summer, started offering some small group / private stuff. Like up to 4 people at my range. I've got just a small private range there now where I train. So that's something I really enjoy. Like working with small groups is fun. It can those have been kind of cool and kind of custom or tailor the course to, especially if it's a group of 4 people or a couple people that are there together. Like, hey, what do you want to do? What can I offer you? Then I've got some of the small group ones that are just like, hey, this is I call it training day. This is like when I train. This is the stuff I like to work on now from my time with shooting and different applications. Like when I go train, this is kind of how I train to get maximum value out of the time, and have fun with it.
Yeah.
But I recently had a couple that wanted to do, and I was like, haven't done tactic stuff outside of the military or law enforcement folks in a while, or actually ever, I don't think. But I had a couple that came to one of my performance classes, and they wanted to do like, hey, we're interested in like CQB type tactics. For our application is like, we're out together. There's 2 of us, or we're in our house. If we needed to, get from point A to point B, if there was like, shooting or something, we need to safely get from one place to another. It's like, I can use the stuff that we did in the military side of the house, close quarters battle stuff, those concepts and fundamentals, I'll work with them on like, here's how you apply these. I mean, you're not going to conduct a raid on a compound in Afghanistan, but, the concepts, here's how you can apply those concepts and fundamentals to.
We're talking about like clearing their own house kind of a thing?
To safely get from one place to another.
Okay. That's actually really practical. I mean,
absolutely. It's like, well, yeah, I can get behind that. And like definitely, as I was having this conversation with them, like I've got some information to offer you on that, and I can get behind the application. So we did, and that was cool. And so I may offer a little bit more of that.
Okay.
And some more fundamentals. Like I say, performance shooting has been something I've been super passionate about for a while, but I think I'm gonna offer some smaller or shorter duration stuff on fundamentals and defensive shooting application stuff.
That would be good. Okay, so all of that's on the website, YouTube,
and coming up soon.
Coming soon. Stay tuned.
I have another subscription thing too, something I've been wanting to do for a while and finally figured out how to do it. It's just super base. Most of my videos are just like, I've had a few that are professionally produced. I had a good friend out in Southern California did a pistol DVD for me and a carbine DVD. And he did an excellent job of putting that all together. Those are on my subscription thing through Vimeo. It's FPTV. And then figured out a little bit of editing so I can set a camera up and I can talk over a concept and demo it, and I've got like 100-something videos available on that subscription now too. And just drills and stuff too. A lot of times folks just really like drills. And
that's good. That's good. All those new gun owners need all the information.
I don't do a night vision or a low light class, but I've got plenty of experience using guns at night. So it's something easy. Like I don't necessarily have like 16 hours of information on how to shoot with a light on a gun, but I got 10 minutes of pretty good highlight stuff. So those sorts of things are on there.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll check them out.
Yeah.
And sorry, Mike Glover, we just ran out of time.